I quickly realized that if I was going to show anybody the blog, I couldn't just show people a wall of text. So I made a little cartoon drawn with, like, you know, you click and drag a circle, and then underneath it, I'd click and drag another circle for a body, and then 2 little circles for hands and 2 little circles for feet. And the little character was called Dis. It was just to provide a little bit of levity to my slightly badly written, full of spelling mistakes and everything else articles.
Hello there, I'm Sarah McCluskey, and this is Research Adjacent. Each episode, I talk to amazing research adjacent professionals about what they do and why it makes a difference. Keep listening to find out why we think the research adjacent space is where the real magic happens. Normal podcast service resumes this week with my guest Matthew Partridge. Matthew is a biochemist turned cartoonist and founder of Errant Science. Errant Science creates simple cartoons which explain and poke fun at science and lab life. And if you don't know Matthew's work, make sure to go and click on the links in the show notes to visit either the Errant Science website or their social media accounts to have a look at what I'm talking about. It is perhaps surprising that Matthew has ended up where he is now. At school, he was convinced that research would be boring and wasn't even allowed to do GCSE art. But beyond that, his story is a familiar one. During research jobs in academia and industry, he became a STEM ambassador and started doing outreach. To help with his communication skills, he started a blog and then created a stick figure character called Dis to help illustrate those blogs. Dyslexia scuppered the writing, but Dis was a winner, and his cartooning side hustle grew steadily until it started to look like a better option than the research day job. Matthew and his colleagues now create bespoke cartoons, train and support others, and even do live cartooning for events. Listen on to hear all about Matthew's journey. Welcome along, Matthew. Thanks for coming on the podcast today. I wonder if we could start by you just telling us a bit about what it is that you do in this research adjacent world.
Oh, hi. Well, thanks very much for having me. Yes, I'm Dr. Matthew Partridge. I am the sort of the founder and the cartoonist behind Errant Science. And as my sort of role with Errant Science, we do a whole bunch of stuff that's research adjacent, but all of it broadly, I think, comes under the umbrella of explaining research and helping and promoting kind of research outreach and the sort of the sharing of people's science and stories in science and how it works and things like that.
Sounds really interesting. Look forward to digging into this a little bit more. Could you tell us, first of all, a bit about how you got into doing that sort of work?
So my career in sort of going into outreach, I suppose, has been one that's kind of run alongside having a career in research. So I got a degree in biochemistry, pretty much went straight from school to university, got a degree in biochemistry, and then went into industry. And then went from industry back to university to do a PhD and spent a number of years, about 12 years working in as a postdoc and doing research on diagnostics and fiber optic molecular sensors was kind of my speciality, which are fun and exciting, but I'm not going to talk about too much about them. But throughout all of that, I kind of kept dipping into or trying out different parts of doing outreach or sharing science. And I think it's something that we get asked quite a bit now. I'm solely doing outreach, and it's going to make me kind of self-reflect a little bit on where some of it comes from. But I like to explain how I got into doing outreach. I suppose I have to start from before I even did any research, to kind of explain that I was a stupid kid once. And that comes from when I was at school. We did a thing where we got to do like mock interviews. I guess they were like kind of job interviews, kind of university interviews. I would have been about 16, 17. And the school arranged to have some scientists come in to like do like a mock interview of and about what would be like working in a lab. And these 2 scientists came in, and I went in and I did my mock interview. And at one point, one of them said, "Why do you want to work in research?" Because at that age, all I wanted to do, I wanted to work in research, but I want to work in the word research. I didn't know what that meant. And they said, "Why did you want to work in research?" And I said, I think I could deal with the boredom." Was my response. And both researchers did what you just did, which is that they just kind of cracked up laughing and kind of quietly died inside. Yes. And I died, and thinking back a bit, I cringe horrifically. But it when I started, then I went through my degree, and then I started in industry. I kind of realized that younger me hadn't got a clue what it was that I actually was doing. By the time I was actually in a lab, the things I was doing on a day-to-day, younger me had literally no concept any of that existed. And even the version of me at university didn't really understand what working in a lab every day was. And so the sort of my very first foray into outreach was I joined the STEM Ambassador program, which is a program in the UK to get scientists to go to schools to talk about your life in research, that's kind of broadly what I thought was missing. And that was how I started. I kind of started just kind of wanting to make sure that other people weren't quite as naive about research as I was. Although having been a researcher for now like 17, 18 years, I mean, there's a lot of boredom. So maybe I was onto something a little bit, but I'd like people to understand that it's more than just that.
There's a lot of experiments not working and having to do them again, and
Quite. Yes. Yeah.
So when did the cartooning come in? Was that something you've always done from when you were younger as well?
No, I'm terrible at art. Still am. And I was terrible at art when I was younger as well. I think at one point I was doing art before I did my GCSE choices when I was about 13, 14. And my art teacher suggested that I would not be the sort of person who should carry on to do GCSE art. And I think if you're not asked to go to do GCSE art, that really is, like at that point, I'm not sure I could get crayons onto paper that's put in front of me. It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But once I was doing the STEM Ambassador stuff, I quite liked doing the outreach stuff. So I started writing a blog. And I have very bad dyslexia. So writing for me is very difficult. So I started writing a blog pretty much as a sort of like an English exercise to try and help my dyslexia. But my blog was entirely focused about research, about science and life in research. And I quickly realized that if I was going to show anybody the blog, I couldn't just show people a wall of text. It needed to have an image. Yeah. And I was like, well, I don't want to just steal images off Google. So I made a little cartoon that went with it, that was drawn with like, you click and drag a circle. And then underneath it, I'd click and drag another circle for a body, and then 2 little circles for hands and 2 little circles for feet. And the little character was called Dis. And I draw these little one panel, tiny little cartoons that was made by me drawing circles on Adobe Illustrator or something far too expensive for what I was doing. And it was just to provide a little bit of levity to my slightly badly written, full of type spelling mistakes and everything else articles, which if anybody is interested in are no longer on the internet. I have carefully expunged those. My writing exercise that was mostly read by about 15 people. No one needs to see how bad my writing was, but I think you could occasionally find the odd cartoon somewhere. They certainly appear in our talks. But so that was where it kind of started, was drawing these little things that were just poking fun at nothing in particular, but again trying to share research a little bit, like a proto version of what we do now. But one that I'm not keen to put online again. So.
Fair enough. So at what point did you transition then from doing a little bit of drawing on the side, writing a blog, doing this kind of outreach and STEM ambassadors? That's still quite a big leap to then decide to start a whole company doing that side of things.
Yeah, so I mean it's one of those things, I guess it started slowly in a way until it became too big to kind of ignore. So I think I started with kind of doing schools outreach, and then I kind of moved on to more doing adult outreach and trying to speak to a slightly older audience. So sort of generally speaking, what we do is produced for about 16 plus. You don't have to be doing A-level or high-level science, but you should have like a good understanding of science, I think, generally. And that was kind of through slowly iterations of things that we were doing. We were doing little bits of outreach or doing schools projects, or we helped out with Soapbox Science, which is again now an international science thing that we were a big part of one of our local chapters. And through all of those, we were just kind of doing more and more different varieties of outreach. The first blog, I stopped that because it just became a bit too onerous. But then we started like a departmental one, and I was then writing slightly more formal but kind of better written articles. And that's what became Errant Science. And that was kind of going on. So I was doing that alongside my research job. So I had a full-time research job, and then I was kind of writing weekly articles and drawing almost daily comics at that point, as well as then going out and doing other things. Like we went and did a show up at the Fringe to kind of make fun of fiber optics, and we did a bunch of other like how to cartoon science shows at events and things, but all the time it was sort of happening alongside research. And it was fun. It was really, really fun. I was really enjoying it. And then I had quite a big change in my personal life where I became a single parent to 2 kids, and trying to do research and trying to be a single parent is very, very, very hard. And so I kind of had, it was one of those things where Errant Science was really fun, and it was something we were doing a lot of. With my business partner Michelle, we were kind of getting people were coming to us asking for us to help produce content and things like that, and it was just a case of, well, this seems a lot easier to do from my dining room table, and it's a lot easier to do it between the hours of 9:30 and 2:30 before I go and do school runs. So I'm going to do this for a bit, and I'm going to try and help more people and do more things, and that's kind of where we are now with it. It's a combination of things I was really enjoying, but also things in my own world that just made this kind of the best option
for it. Really interesting story, and to show that transition as well, how things it's sort of gradual evolution and life circumstances and end up where you end up. And I'm sure that you've made it sound like quite a smooth transition. What were the biggest hurdles along the way of that journey?
Well, the biggest hurdles I would say is, I think I don't know how personal it is. I know from other people as well, but I would say the biggest hurdles are, I worked in industry for I think about 5 or 6 years, and then academia, and both of them are, I would say, resistant to outreach at times, or at least parts of them are. And so I'd often find that they were very keen on certain parts of the outreach I was doing, but very much not on board with other bits. And it was really depends on who was in charge of making those decisions sometimes. So I think it was a constant thing where, I think the biggest resistance to doing any outreach was the sadly quite vocal minority in both of those two areas that kind of didn't really see the value in outreach. They saw the value in marketing. And if you could argue that what you were doing was marketing either the brand or marketing the research group, then everything was kind of generally fine. But if you were doing things for the greater good, the number of people that would support you did seem to shrink quite sharply. And that was, it's fine. You kind of, there's always the supportive people, and there's always the outreach groups and things that kind of get you through. And there are some amazing groups that supported me all the way through kind of doing these things. But there's always that resistance, and there's always that, I don't know, you're spending an hour writing this article. That's an hour you could have spent in the lab. Why aren't you in the lab? You should be in the lab. And that's for somebody who, when you were young as a researcher, that was quite a hard hurdle to get over, was that you really do have to have a little bit of a thick skin, and you really have to be a bit determined that this is a good thing to be doing. So for me, that was very much like trying to do outreach where I was always constantly oddly supported and oddly pushing back against resistance. It was a sort of an odd combo.
Oh, that's I think quite common, certainly with my own experience. I had a similar thing when my PhD supervisor didn't like all the stuff I was doing on the side either. So I think a lot of people will relate to that. So with that, now you're saying that, does that that sense that some people are looking for a certain kind of thing, does that influence the work that you do now? So what I'm thinking is, do people who come to you, do they get it? Or do people come to you sort of like, we want to market our research? Is it still that kind of sense of dissemination more than engagement?
I think it's everything. It's
Yeah.
we get the full spectrum.
Mhm.
We work with companies who are interested in promoting their brand of noodles. we had a noodle company come and wants us to write some sort of slightly sciencey content and then produce some
Okay, yeah.
cartoons explaining why their noodles were the best noodles,
Oh.
which it's very much like explaining the science behind what they were doing in order to
Mhm.
make theirs healthy. It's very much we're not an advertising company. We're not
Yeah.
here to tell
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
their noodles are the best, really. But so that on the one hand, that they are 100%. If we're not writing content or producing content that
Mhm.
doesn't say that theirs is amazing and it sells more noodles, they don't really care about talking to
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
But then on the other hand, we work with people who just have a wonderful bit of science that they worked on. Like we've had some PhD students from various different places come to us and say, hey, I've just done my thesis and I really want to share my thesis and I really want people to see that my work is fun and interesting. Could you draw us a cartoon to go with our thesis? And all they want to do is they just want people to notice their work
Yeah.
and be interested in their work, and they want more people to understand that their work is interesting and important. And I kind of that they're the loveliest people.
Yeah.
Because they've got that kind of passion for wanting their science to have a wider audience, and just don't necessarily know how or don't have the network that we
Yeah.
do in order to kind of give it that kind of boost. And yeah, I have to say, of the two groups, it's got to be the latter group that I like working with.
Yeah.
But as I said, we work with people all between. We've worked with university groups that are somewhere halfway between, where they really do want to share their science, but their funding is such that they need to have been seen to be sharing
Yes.
science.
Yes. I know what you mean.
So it's a kind of there's always a little bit of the battle that there is in academic research between almost making it a bit commercial and
Yeah.
actually for the greater good.
Yeah.
So I would happily talk about all sorts of projects anywhere between those two, but we've definitely worked on a wide range now.
Well, I think that leads very nicely into my next question, which is maybe could you give us a couple of examples of things you worked on that you're really proud of?
Oh my God, there's so many things. We've worked on so many things and I'm proud of all of them. So,
and I should say I can put pictures. So if there's things that would work better with visuals, we can put links to things in the show notes. So.
For a site that mainly makes cartoons, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
They are an entirely visual medium.
Yeah.
I mean, audio descriptions of cartoons, they're great, but they're not quite the
same.
No matter how simply we draw our cartoons.
Yeah.
So I think there's several projects that we're super duper proud of. There's some that sort of we're proud of because they just keep being fun to do, and we've done them for a really long time. So one project I think where I'm going to name them because they've kind of been our longest supporter, which is a magazine called Laboratory News. And so back long before we did this as an actual, we're kind of doing this as my sole job. I was writing articles for the blog, and one of their editors contacted me and said, "Hey, this is really funny. We like this. Could we put it in our magazine?" And I said, "Sure. Would you like one next month as well?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, actually, this would be amazing. We've got loads of magazine space, so this would be fantastic." Yeah. And that was about 6 years ago now. And we've been writing kind of near monthly articles and giving them cartoons and every month for 6 years.
Brilliant.
And it's a really, really good it's free. You can go online, you can register. They will send you an actual printed copy of a real magazine. Oh, wow. I know, it's so like 2010s.
Yeah.
And they have a digital edition as well. But they've been, we've done special features for them. They've promoted our stuff, and that has been so much fun, just to continuously write funny articles about the stupidity of science and put them in a magazine alongside people saying, "Hey, plate readers, this is why you should buy this one or this one." And it's, and it's been really lovely to be their kind of comedic relief to the magazine. And then, again, to talk about things that we've done for quite a long time, the other one is probably the Royal Society of Chemistry, who we've done a few different things for them over the years, but the one we kind of have been doing really consistently is supporting their RSC Twitter poster conference that they do every year. At the time of recording this podcast, They're doing the next one in about 4 or 5 days,
Right,
which by the time the podcast goes out,
it'll
is no
probably
longer
be
relevant. But in 2024, it would be around February, March time.
Right, yeah.
And what they do, if you've not heard of it, is they invite researchers from all over the world to submit posters virtually through Twitter to a series of grouped hashtags, and then you post them on Twitter during this 24-hour period with the right hashtag, and then other Twitter users look at your poster and talk to you about it.
Nice.
It's like a virtual poster session to which everyone can attend, and everyone can submit, and everyone can discuss, and there's competitions and prizes and things like that. And it's an amazing thing to see, and it's an amazing thing to be part of. But we've been doing cartoons for them for the last many years, where during that 24-hour period, we will cartoon as many posters as we can. So we'll see someone's poster, we'll think of a joke or something that explains it in a kind of a funny, shareable way, and then we will draw it and then post it up online very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that for a while. It does mean that I have to draw somewhere in the region of about 20 to 30 cartoons in 24 hours, which is, it sometimes almost breaks me. But it's really good fun. And I have to draw cartoons all about everything from safety in industrial plants through to machine learning of molecular structures, and then complex catalytic chemistry. So it's very, very challenging.
And do they get collated somewhere or done something with?
So all of the cartoons go straight out online and sent to the people that produce the posters. The Royal Society of Chemistry then kind of shares them as well. At the end of the event, whoever wins the poster competition gets a special cartoon made and put on a mug for them, and we send them a mug. And all of the cartoons then get put together and put up on our blog. So if you go to erantscience.com, you can see all of the past years are all kind of in galleries and things like that, and they're all often linked to the original kind of posters and things, so you can go read the piece of research, because the whole idea of the cartoon is that it might get people to go read or understand that research who might otherwise keep scrolling and not see or not pause and think about that piece of research. So we do try and choose ones that not just are easy to cartoon. Sometimes that is a thought. But we try to choose ones which we think are really interesting bits of research, and as well as best we can understand them. You know, a biochemistry degree is not a chemistry degree. So, but we've done it. You know, we've done similar things where we do live cartooning for the Geoscience Union. We've done it for AI research groups. We've done it for writing groups, all sorts of kind of disparate, connected to science things. So it's amazing how good you get at coming up with a cartoon and a cartoon-based kind of joke and an explainer in whatever 5 minutes, so that you could quickly draw this thing. So I think those are two of our kind of like those are I can now go on like keep listing projects.
We'll definitely get some links to those and put them in the show notes. People can go and have a look.
Thank you. So but we've done, we produce some video content. We do training sessions as well, which we've really loved. We've done the live shows where we're kind of more, I think we've been used at conferences as a good icebreaker, where we come in and talk about funny, silly things for about half an hour. And we've done a bit more of that, kind of that live cartooning. We've done that live in person at events where I sit at the back of the room, and by the end of someone's talk, there's a cartoon of their work online ready for them and stuff. So we do a big mix of stuff. So
it does. Sounds busy and interesting. Lots of different things going on.
We can always be busier.
It's always the way, isn't it? But so one question I like to ask all of my guests, which is, if you had a magic wand and an unlimited budget, what would you change about the world that you work in, or research, or the way that research is communicated?
If we had a magic wand, an unlimited budget, I think we would do what I think outreach groups and funders and societies are already trying to do. We would just give them more money to do it, which is we would try and get it so that everybody who works in research can have 10% of their time devoted to outreach and doing better outreach. Now, for some scientists, because not everybody has to be on Twitter, and not every scientist has to stand up at schools. But for some scientists, that will be doing that. That will be having that time and having that freedom to go out and try and communicate their work. For other scientists, just be learning to communicate their work better to their own smaller audiences.
Yeah.
We all, as outreach people, have different audiences we work with, and I'd love it if scientists had more time to understand what audiences they want to talk to, whether or not it's the people who read their journal, which is of itself a kind of outreach, or whether it's they want to go on TV and talk to the British public.
Yeah.
I'd love it if within the research projects and within the things that they do, we just appreciated that everybody needs a really decent chunk of their time to go and get better at doing that and understand how to be good at doing that. Because it's a real hard skill. And a lot of the time, scientists are trying to do 900 different jobs, from raising money to writing papers to occasionally doing research. And I think, the last few years with all sorts of different technological issues in the media have shown that science could always be better at explaining science.
Yeah.
It's one thing to sit here and say, oh, I do work on something brilliant. Everybody has to see that it's brilliant because it solves world hunger. Everyone will understand why that's brilliant. No, that's not how the world works. You need to be good at explaining it to people, and you need to be good at somewhat championing it to the audience that you want to do that to. So I think, if I had an unlimited budget, time, resources, it would be to give that budget to other people and tell them, take a bit of time, work out who you want to talk to, and make it part of their training. Which again, I really should stress that funders and societies are trying to do. But it's one of those things. It's never enough and it's never fast enough. And I think it would make a huge world of difference if it just was that little bit faster and it was that bit better adopted. We shouldn't have to wait for a generation of researchers and scientists to leave the job for the next generation to come up and go, okay, no, now they're gone, we can do this. I'd like to see people do it a bit more freely. That would be fantastic.
Nice. I think a lot of people would sign up to that with you. So I always give my guests the opportunity to give a shout out to few other people that they think are doing really good work in their little worlds. So is there anybody that you would like to mention?
Can I mention the people who work for us? So our kind of team, I should say, are fantastic. So Sarah Hussein, who's our community manager, is really good. And if you want to talk to people about outreach, then we have like an Errant Science Discord, which you can find on our website, where Sarah particularly does really well at helping people talk about their science and do outreach and things. And we have Victoria, who helps us with our training programs. And we've just put up a video about how to draw cartoons, and we'll have more training videos going up soon. But in the wider community, there are loads of people that do loads of amazing things. I think one person who weirdly we are entirely reliant on in a way is a person called Joe Brody, who runs the SciComm JISC Mail newsletter, and that newsletter is fantastic because if you could sign up to it for free, and you basically get every day a big list of all the different exciting outreach projects that are happening or outreach jobs that are available, and that is kind of an amazing free resource. Again, if you're not in the UK, it's a very UK focused list, but from there are loads of links to international versions of that as well. So again, we just like to help each other, so it's lots of like sharing lists of other lists that do the same thing. So that is kind of amazing. And for anybody who really enjoys what we do, with cartoons and silly jokes and stuff like that, there are some amazing other cartoony science artists around. And we work with an illustrator called Chloe Rogers, who is fantastic. She does beautiful illustrations. And for cartoons, you really can't go wrong with Eliza Wolfson's stuff. She does lots of things with lab rats because she's a microbiologist, and they're really, really funny. much better drawings than we do. They're far more beautiful. She's got an actual artistic talent, unlike us and our stick people. So both of those are worth following and laughing at and giggling with as well. So
great. I will get some links as well and put those in the show notes. So just to finish, where can people find you if they want to find out, connect with you or connect with Errant Science?
So we're at Errant Science basically everywhere. The simplest thing to do is to find us on errantscience.com. From there you can find us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Tumblr, on Facebook, on Mastodon. Again, Mastodon is great. You should join Mastodon before Twitter dies. And you can follow from there. You can follow myself and follow all the people that help out with us, who we constantly link to and share their things. And the best place to come and talk to us and ask me questions is our Discord, which again is Errant Science, which we'll give you the link to associated with this. But it's not just a place where we talk about Errant Science. We just generally talk about research and outreach and jokes and cats. And if you go look at our Instagram stories, you'll see a lot of our cat. Yeah, go look all over those amazing places.
Sounds like a place to be. Oh, well, thank you so much, Matthew, for taking the time to have a chat today. And it's been really interesting. And I'm really looking forward to going and looking up some of those cartoonists and things you mentioned. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been fantastic.
Thanks for listening to Research Adjacent. You can find show notes and other episodes at researchadjacent.com. I would absolutely love to hear what you think of the show, so please get in touch. You can drop us a message via researchadjacent.com or find us on social media at resadjacent. And if you've enjoyed the show, please think about sharing it, subscribing or leaving a review so that other people can find us too. Research Adjacent is presented and produced by Sarah McCluskey, and you, yes you, get a big gold star for listening right to the end. See you next time.